Carolina is one of the safest states in the country to work in right now. Last year, we were ranked number 2 in the country for workplace safety after having been ranked number 23 the year before. So we made a 21-spot jump. Something's not right. If the elevators aren't inspected on time, the fact that my name and my picture's on there means I'm the guy. Either you give credit because the job's been done the right way, or you hold me accountable if the job hasn't been done right.
Welcome to Constructing the Carolinas, brought to you by Barnhill, the podcast where we explore the people, partnerships, and projects shaping communities across the Carolinas. I'm your host, Jed Byrne, Director of Business Development at Barnhill, and I'm glad you're here. Hello and welcome back to Constructing the Carolinas, the Barnhill podcast. I'm here with a very special guest, North Carolina Labor Commissioner Luke Farley. Commissioner Farley, if you could, can we just start off with a brief intro, a little bit about who you are, and again, your department, I think, covers a lot of bases in North Carolina. We were talking right before we started recording about parades. So you guys cover a lot of bases. Could you say a little bit about what you guys do and specifically kind of what your day in and day out looks like?
Well, the North Carolina Commissioner of Labor is a statewide elected office in North Carolina. We're actually only one of 4 states in the country that elects its labor commissioner. Every other state, the labor commissioner or the labor secretary, whatever they might call it, is appointed by the governor. But here, the people of North Carolina get to choose their labor commissioner. And in fact, we have more statewide elected officials than any other state in the country. The other 4 that elect their labor commissioner are Georgia, Oklahoma, and Oregon. And so unique opportunity for the citizens to have a direct impact on who runs labor policy and labor enforcement in the state, because really not a lot of other states do it. But it is a statewide elected office, elected every 4 years. For me, it is an enormous privilege to serve as labor commissioner. This is the greatest state in the country as far as I'm concerned. And so holding a statewide office and serving the people of this great state is just a tremendous blessing and opportunity as commissioner. And the agency is the state agency that's been set up to protect the workers of North Carolina. That is our primary focus. What gets a lot of attention is workplace safety, but we're also the wage and hour agency for the state, the anti-discrimination agency for the state, the youth employment agency for the state to make sure we don't have kids working in unsafe conditions or engaging in child labor. And of course, we also famously inspect the elevators.
Good. And we may talk about that. So you were elected last year. You started serving this year. What would you say, if anything, was kind of the biggest surprise to you about your new office?
The impact you can have on the people in North Carolina, because we have well over 4 million workers in this state, and all of them are protected by the North Carolina Department of Labor. And we've got about 350,000 employers in the state, and those employers fall under the jurisdiction of the Department of Labor. And even if you don't work or own a business, you probably ride an elevator or an amusement ride or an escalator. So everybody in the state is at some point touched by the work of the North Carolina Department of Labor.
Yep. And again, I got to hit the elevator comment. We were on our way up to this location today, rode in an elevator, saw your face. So, you might know, you probably do know how many elevators are in the state. And with that many elevators, you probably got one of the most recognizable faces in the state. How, if anything, has your life changed since you were kind of blasted across the state in the elevators?
Well, it's certainly a change. I had never held any elected office before I became commissioner. I was pretty private in my life. And then all of a sudden, your face is all over 32,000 devices. So it's elevators, escalators, moving sidewalks, all those things, the things in the airport.
Yep.
We inspect all of those, and they've got the certificate. And so life is a lot less private than it used to be. You go into the grocery store, and people will recognize you. And sometimes they'll recognize you and know you're the elevator guy. Yep. But other times they're just like, I know you, and I don't know.
I've seen that face before.
Right. Like, how do we know each other? And I have to tell them, we don't actually know each other. I'm in your elevator, but I appreciate that you feel like you know me. Weird stuff is like, you got to make sure your kids behave in public now, right? Yeah. You don't want to be like calling down your kid in public and being like, is that the elevator guy yelling at his 2-year-old throwing a temper tantrum?
You're the elevator guy's kid, yeah.
Yeah, so you have to be comfortable being recognized and kind of people who know who you are.
I think that's got to be one of the more interesting things, because there are certainly famous people in the world, and I think a lot of people are famous and they're connected to their fame, whereas I do imagine there are plenty of people who will just see you, right, walking down the aisle of the grocery store, and you just got this very familiar face. And again, and you see it, it's not just once. I mean, it's like gas prices. You see it all the time.
Sure.
And so it's highly recognizable, but again, not everybody, I'm sure, connects it to your office, which maybe has upsides, but is certainly a unique experience.
The important part of it, though, is government accountability, right?
Yeah.
I wouldn't put my picture or my name or my signature on anything if I wasn't willing to stand behind it.
Yeah.
And so when you see my name and my picture and my signature on an elevator certificate or an amusement ride certificate, it's because I have confidence in the work being done by the department. And people know who to hold accountable. And it's good for government accountability. If something's not right, if the elevators aren't inspected on time, the fact that my name and my picture's on there means I'm the guy. Either you give credit because the job's been done the right way, or you hold me accountable if the job hasn't been done right.
Yeah. And again, I mean, you oversee worker safety in general, but again, that's if something's going wrong with the elevators, if they're not inspected well, if they're not safe, we've got big problems. And so again, I don't know, most people would connect accountability to that document, but I think that absolutely is what it stands for. And again, it's important whether people appreciate how important a lot of the stuff we're going to talk about today. I don't know unless you're in the industry. You think about all that often because, again, I think in North Carolina, in the United States, most people don't think too much about safety going into work every day because they don't have to. They don't think about things going sideways because they don't have to. Because, again, it's already safe.
Well, you're from Barnhill, and Barnhill does things the right way. Right. Not everybody does it that way, and there are places where safety really does have to be top of mind because people aren't doing it the right way. But credit to Barnhill for being one of our safest large contractors out there. But
I was just thinking when I work in a normal office, that's not necessarily a thing I'm thinking of. Where I've worked in factories before, that's top of mind. Obviously, I'm on construction sites all the time, very much top of mind. And again, it's a culture, but it matters, and we want to make sure our people get home safe every day. So let's talk a little bit about construction and construction safety. What do you see as kind of the state of construction safety here in North Carolina today?
I think the state is good, but there's always room to get better. North Carolina is one of the safest states in the country to work in right now. Last year, we were ranked number 2 in the country for workplace safety after having been ranked number 23 the year before. So we made a 21 spot jump just my first year in office. So the state of safety in North Carolina is good, but it can be getting better. There are some alarming trends, and maybe we can get into them, like struck by accidents, new leading cause of workplace deaths. But overall, we're in a good place and getting better. And we have historically been getting better. So the incidence rate, which is the key measure, at least as far as I'm concerned, for workplace safety in North Carolina, the number of workers injured per 100,000 workers over 20 years has basically been cut in half.
And is the incident rate specifically for construction, or is that all workers across the state?
That's overall. You could dive deeper into other numbers, but the overall as safety
has been cut in half.
Yeah. And so that's been cut in half over 20 years. So the state of safety in North Carolina is good, but I'd like to, it was originally like a 4.2. It's now a 2.1. I'd like to see it get to a 0.0. And that's the goal we have, right? We believe every workplace accident is ultimately preventable by following the rules. And so while we've made enormous progress, there's a lot of opportunity to get us to zero, and we focus on that.
So what do you see as some of the biggest opportunities to get us to zero?
I would say the biggest opportunities are better collaboration between business and industry on the one hand and the department on the other. I think there's a perception in the industry, particularly construction, and I kind of come out of the construction industry myself. I was a construction lawyer, so I represented contractors like Barnhill for a long time. There's a perception in the industry that the department is here just to wag a finger, issue citations and penalties, and get people in trouble and call them out when they're not doing something right. And there's a role for that in the agency, and we do that. When there are bad apple employers out there who are not taking care of their employees or not paying them what they've been promised or discriminating against them, we take those people to task, and that's the way it ought to be. But there are other people out there, like the Barnhills of the world, who are striving for, I think, safety excellence and doing right by their employees. And so we want to partner with those people and collaborate with them. And we want to spread the message that we want a collaborative relationship with business and industry because we think that is what ultimately creates best outcomes for both employers and employees. When people aren't afraid of the department but see us as a resource and work with us to improve safety and other outcomes for workers.
And so another question I have listed here is kind of the opposite of what do you see as challenges? Is it those relationships with industry, or is there some other kind of big hurdle that you see?
It is a big challenge, I think, relationship with industry. That's where I would start, is trying to build bridges and knock down barriers and get employers to see us as a trusted resource. and somebody who genuinely wants to see them succeed. We just want them to do it safely and within the bounds of the law. Y'all are the job creators of the state. Despite the name of labor, we don't make any jobs. Y'all make jobs. If the people in North Carolina are going to have good, high-paying jobs, it's going to be because private industry creates them. So we want you to be successful. We just want you to do it within the bounds of the law and make sure everybody who works for you goes home safe at the end of the workday. And so spreading that message that we, in fact, want you to be successful. We're not here to punish. We're here to work together and collaborate and provide resources is really, I think, one of the biggest hurdles we have to get over. Because I think once people get bought into that idea, we will be more successful as a state. We'll be more successful as an agency too.
Perfect. We talked about, or you just mentioned success and the goal of 0 incidents. I think, and I don't know what percentage of jobs and roles have this kind of upstream impact, but success in your world is reducing incidents, and so you're trying to, success is kind of invisible in some ways, because if you said, hey, we stopped 10 or 100 or 1,000 incidents last year, by definition, they would never happen. So you can't point to and say, oh, well, that was the one we stopped. That was the other one we stopped.
Sure.
So it's kind of a unique perspective that I think you guys have, or I guess viewpoint that you guys have on the marketplace. How do you think about traction and success and moving towards the goal when, again, a job well done for you guys is meaning something didn't happen, where a job well done for Barnhill means people have a place to live, or an office can be built. We can point to exactly what we've accomplished, and I think you can point to the metrics, but so many things that could have happened every single day didn't. I mean, again, if we're at single digit incident rate, it could be 100, right? We want to get to 0, but it could be closer to 100. I mean, you could have a horrendous state of things. And I don't know, it just seems like it's hard to get credit for all the things that didn't happen.
There is, but I'm very interested in getting people to start tracking their near misses. And so actually that gets to the point that you're making, that near misses are learning opportunities, and near misses are opportunities for people to say, we did it right, but we sure came close to something bad. And a lot of contractors do track their near misses, and I want to encourage contractors to track their near misses. Now, some folks are concerned about tracking their near misses because they're afraid it'll get used against them, right? Like somebody gets hurt and we're going to get sued and they're going to ask to see all our list of near misses. I think there are some ways that we could fix that through legislation to protect the right to track near misses, but I think it's very important, and I don't think people should be afraid to track near misses because they create this learning opportunity. And they tell people, listen, we did it right, but we sure came close. And so to your point, the success can be unseen, but one way to sort of track that is a near miss, and I'd like to see people track that.
So what would, I'm sure I could think of examples of near misses, but what in your mind what quantifies as a near miss? Because again, I don't know that it's perfectly objective to say, well, that was a near miss, right? If you have a tool laying on a platform that never fell, never got kicked, but certainly could have, is the fact that you see a tool laying on the platform a near miss, or is there some criteria to near miss that can be traced?
I think it's necessarily sort of a fluid concept, but that's the kind of things, I think it's sort of, it when you see it, right? Everybody sort of will look at a circumstance and say, nobody was hurt here, but we kind of missed it by the skin of our teeth. And so those create great learning opportunities because you did do it right. You did have you were following the standards and the safety precautions were in place, but something else made it just that you came this close to it. And so I think tracking those things are great. I encourage contractors to do it. We have no interest in the department of going after people because they track near misses, because we want to encourage you to do that. So let's talk again a little bit more about data. What other metrics or KPIs or data are you guys tracking, either agency-wide or specific to construction, that would be informative for us and the folks listening to know about? So when it comes to safety, there are a couple of KPIs that are sort of the gold standard for measuring safety in North Carolina. So you've got the incidence rate, which is the rate of injuries per 100,000 workers. You've got the DART rate, which stands for Days Away Restricted Time, DART. The DART rate, Days Away Restricted Time. And then you've got the TRC, total recordable cases. And those are the three key metrics of workplace safety. And so those are the things we're tracking as an agency. That's how we tell whether things are going well in North Carolina or any given industry, and certainly would encourage contractors to track those numbers themselves.
Awesome. And we talked a little bit about this at the beginning of the show where I may be getting it wrong, but I took the note. So we were the number 2 state in the country for workplace safety. Is that right?
Yes, in last year.
Okay. So in last year, what do you think – I don't know. I don't even know if I want to bring up who is number 1, but what do you think it takes to
I don't mind telling you, it's Virginia.
Okay.
And we're coming for them.
Okay, good.
Don't worry.
So what does it take? What does it take to get
everybody
there?
can know we're coming for you, Virginia.
You listening? So what do you think it takes to get to number 1?
I think what it takes to get to number 1 is a culture of safety across all employers in North Carolina. There is not yet, I think, a culture of safety that has been uniformly adopted by every employer.
Okay.
You know, your experiences with people like Barnhill, everybody's not Barnhill, I can tell you that. And so getting people to buy in to the value of safety, either because it's the right thing to do to take care of your employees or because it's good for the bottom line. There's all sorts of business case, there's lots of ways to make a business case for why safety is good. So either way, either do it because it's the right thing to do or do it because it's good for your bottom line, but safety is good either way.
So let's talk about then the business case. What do you think are some of the highest impact things that a company, and again, I don't no need to call out any companies, but if there's a company that isn't thinking about safety culture, and then you get flash forward 3 years, they've made the changes necessary. Now they've employed a culture of safety. What do you think are some of those business impacts that they will see?
Yeah, well, that's a good way to ask it. What would change in your business over a 3-year period if you adopted a safety culture? Here's what I think will happen. Your insurance rates would go down, right? Your workers' comp insurance rates would go down. There's a loss of efficiency that comes when there's a job site accident. I've been on job site accidents where the whole job shuts down for a day. Time is money, right? There may be LDs ticking away any day.
Those are big.
Yeah, and any loss of time in production is costly. One accident will often shut down the whole job site for a day or more.
Yeah.
There's time away for your employees. There's a recruitment and retention issue, right? Nothing tells your employees that you care about them more than making sure they go home to their families, right? You can have all the foosball tables and video games and free drinks and whatever, but the most important thing is that you care that they go home to their family. So it communicates to your team that you care about them and you value them. And in this very competitive job environment, recruiting and retaining talent is huge. And one way to do that is to show them that you care about their safety. So the business case is certainly there for people to adopt a safety culture or adopt safety as a value of their company. I've seen it termed that way too. You know, we talk about safety culture, but there are a lot of good, responsible contractors out there who make safety one of their core values even.
So going back to the number 1 question again, and this is something, again, I am in construction every day, so that's what's top of mind for me. In the pie chart of safety, is construction the number 1 industry that, you know, if we cut incidents in half in construction, would that have the biggest impact? Or are there, you know, is it manufacturing? Are there other industries that, I guess maybe the question is, what's the breakdown in impact that different industries could have on improving safety?
The bulk of our inspection activity and work as an agency is, as far as occupational safety and health goes, is in construction.
Okay.
Yes. You could say it's the most regulated industry by the Department of Labor, at least when it comes to occupational safety and health. And so moving the needle in construction certainly moves the needle across the board. Interestingly, though, the biggest concerns are in residential construction, even more so than commercial construction. It's in residential construction where we find the most problems and the most resistance to the department, right? That's the place where we need to make the most inroads. And if you've got residential home builders listen to this podcast, my message to them would be partner with us. We want you to be successful. We want you to build lots of houses. That'll help solve the housing crisis and bring down prices. Those are all great things, but partner with us to keep the people building those houses safe.
And what do you think is driving the resistance? Is it just that I believe, you know, if I'm a home builder, I believe that having a culture of safety isn't going to improve my business, and I'm more concerned about the business? What drives that resistance typically?
First to say, it's not all residential home builders, right? Large builders are typically bought in to that. But smaller builders who may not have the resources to build a safety program may be afraid of safety issues. And I think it's just the way the home building industry is set up. Again, not all of home building. I mean, I've had plenty of great interactions with some large home builders who are totally bought in on the concept, invited me and been part of their safety stand downs. But a lot of times I think the smaller builders are where the issues are. It's kind of the nature of the work, right? A lot of roofing being done, people at heights, outdoors. And so I think that's what's driving it.
Yeah. And that was, again, when you talk about heights, and I think that often people think, if people think about falls and injuries, they think about, you see someone up on a roof or somebody up, in one of our buildings up, 10, 20, 30 stories, and you think that's where the incidents happen. And you probably know the stats better. Well, I'm sure you know the stats better than I do, but I remember when I first learned about, 6 feet being kind of most incidents, most falls happen below 6 feet. That kind of blew my mind, because you just don't think, okay, well, I'm a layperson. I've been up 6 feet, and I wasn't concerned about, am I going to die or am I going to be injured? But so again, I think it's not always the stuff that people think are going to be the issues really turn out to be the issues. Because again, the people operating super high up very often, if not always, are tied off and have all the safety protocol. They know the risk, but it's, I think, underappreciation of risks that may be deemed lower risk is where people get hurt. And
people get complacent. Yeah. Falls from heights were the leading cause of workplace deaths for many years in North Carolina. We've got a new leading cause of workplace deaths in North Carolina, which are the struck by accidents. So that's a broad category of accidents that include being hit by equipment, whether it's, an excavator on a construction site or a forklift in a warehouse. And it also includes things like being hit by a tool, like, something being, a tool being dropped down the elevator shaft and hitting somebody on the head. Those are now the leading cause of workplace deaths starting in 2024. So before that, it was falls from heights. And now in 2024 and 2025, this new trend of struck by accidents has taken over.
Was that shift because falls decreased or struck by has increased or both, or what caused that flip-flop?
It's primarily driven by the increase in struck by accidents themselves. There are a lot of reasons for that. I think it's the changing nature of work in North Carolina. We have a lot more warehousing and logistics, and we would call it in technical terms materials handling going on. But then there are a lot of these struck bys that don't fall into any neat category, and it's hard to find a rhyme or reason for why they're happening. But we're working to figure it out because we've got to get these numbers down. It's especially concerning to me that we've had this leading cause of death for years, and then all of a sudden it shifts to something else. And that's a trend, and we try to get, if not ahead of trends, then at least get our arms around them.
So let's talk about initiatives. And you mentioned partnerships earlier. We'll circle back to that. But what are kind of the major initiatives as it pertains to construction safety that your agency is focused on? And we can bracket that to 26, 27, the next couple of years, or maybe there's an always North Star that you're focused on. But what would you say are kind of the major initiatives that you and your team are looking at?
Well, the big one is the Struck By initiative. That was put in place by me after this trend came. We saw the trend in the data of the struck by accidents to reverse this trend of making it the leading cause of workplace deaths. And so to the safety professionals who are listening, technically speaking, it is a special emphasis program of the North Carolina Department of Labor, but its sort of brand name is the Struck By Initiative. And it is there to drive down these deaths. And we're doing it in two phases. And so anybody working in construction will want to be aware of this because half of struck by deaths are in construction. Half are in construction. The other half are in what we would call general industry, which is basically everything else. The good news as far as construction goes is the growth has been in the general industry category, the everything else. The struck by deaths in construction have remained constant.
Yeah.
And so there's not any growth there. There's still too many, but there's not any growth. And so we launched this Struck By initiative. It's going to happen in two phases. The first year is a year of education and planning. Education for both workers and employers about, one, that struck by is a problem, and then how to solve this problem. We've got plenty of resources available on our website. We're doing webinars. We're sending out mailers. So there's a whole variety of ways we're getting the word out about what the problem is and how to solve it. It's a planning year for the department because we are crunching the numbers to really figure out where is this happening, why is it happening, and what can we do to bring it down. And so at the end of this education and planning year, we will then shift to a year of targeted enforcement, which is where department inspectors will be out in the field using data to target employers and locations where we think this is happening. And so it's a two-phase thing. We're in the middle of the education and planning year. At the end of this year, we move to the year of targeted enforcement.
And you mentioned near misses earlier. In the second phase, will inspectors be part of tracking and identifying near misses as well? And again, that feels incomplete, right? You'd obviously rather have day in and day out, 100% data, but is that going to be part of it as well?
No, there's no formal tracking of it. I just think it's a best practice for people in safety because if you're not tracking your near misses, there are these close calls that can be instructive that you're not fully appreciating what they are. But that to me is just a best practice. There's no requirement to track the near misses.
And, I think tracking near misses might fall into this category, but are there any safety practices that come to mind that either since you've been on the job you've learned about or observed, or just historical trends? Are there any safety practices that people that have a huge impact that people may undervalue that impact, right? Is there something, I don't want to say basic or simple, but is there something that people could do that would have a huge positive impact on their culture of safety that they may not think of? It just may not come to mind as, I should be focused on this to move the needle.
Yeah, I mean, there are simple things like clean workplaces or safe workplaces. And so that is such a simple thing to do. Put your tools back where they belong. Use one of those pegboards with the outline so you can tell what's missing. Those are simple things that people can do that I think go a long way, because messy workplaces are easy. It's easy to fall, trip, misplace something, get hurt. So clean workplaces are really safe workplaces. That's a simple thing people can do. And also rewarding and acknowledging safety. I know of one employer that gives out something called safety bucks. And if they see you doing something safe on the job, out in the field, you get this safety buck and you can use it to cash in for prizes and things like that. But it's instant recognition, instant gratification for the employees who are doing things the right way. It's not waiting till the end of the month or an employee banquet at the end of the year. It's right there on the spot.
And I would think too, in a again, I don't want to make assumptions, but in a typical culture, when it comes to safety, often you're hearing, hey, don't do that, don't do that. This is the exact opposite. It's kind of like, hey, caught you being good. Hey, you're doing what we've asked you to do. We're doing the right thing. Here's a positive reinforcement instead of just the constant negative reinforcement that I think, again, because it matters, right? You don't want to let a near miss or an unsafe condition pass, right? You have to address it. But if that's all that the team is receiving is kind of this negative reinforcement, I could see that would be a problem over time. And so can you do something basic to just turn that around? I think that could be hugely impactful.
Yeah, it is much more effective than just wagging a finger.
Yeah.
I mean, how many times has anybody been on a job site and somebody doesn't have their hard hat on, and you tell them, put the hard hat on or I'm going to write you up. They put the hard hat on. You turn your back, it's hot, and the hard hat comes off. That's just the negative reinforcement. That is the fear of getting written up, or from our perspective as an agency, the fear of getting a citation or penalty. That will only go so far. Just scaring people into doing the right thing will only get you so far, because that means they're not bought in. They're just afraid. And so when you turn your back, they're going to go back to their old bad habits. So as an agency, we are very much focused on positive reinforcement. We do the annual safety awards program. We've just wrapped that up. There were about 24 banquets all across the state, thousands and thousands of awards. I am certain Barnhill was in there. And so that's the positive reinforcement.
Yeah.
We want to champion people who've been doing it the right way and encourage them and give them positive reinforcement instead of just handing out citations and penalties.
Yeah. And again, it's the more often you can do that, I think the better it is. It's simple to say, hey, we're going to keep a clean job site. It's not always easy because, again, there's lots of things happening. But back to the positive business outcomes. Again, I'm in sales, right? So I think about this from a kind of a client perspective. Even if you're unaware and if you're not in construction day in and day out, if you go to a job site and it's cluttered, you just get a sense of like, okay, well, if this basic thing isn't being taken care of, what else am I missing? What are the things that I'm not seeing?
That's exactly right.
And again, if you can't do the basic things, how do I trust that you're going to be doing the more hard, difficult, complex things well? And so again, from just a positive business case for cleanliness and safety, is it goes a really long way with clients, with prospects, with the general public, people going by your job site. Again, there's all sorts of kind of little things that I think probably do go unnoticed because you don't necessarily hear the random person walking down the sidewalk isn't going to call over the fence and say, hey, I think your job site isn't clean. You need to. They're just going to kind of log it and they're going to see your name on the fence, or they're going to see your name on the truck. And I do think that reputation matters, and it's going to impact your business, again, whether it's today or tomorrow or in the long run. I'm just very glad you brought that up, because I do think it can make a huge difference, even if people kind of undervalue what that could be. So you definitely mentioned a few best practices. Are there anything else that you see kind of the best in the industry, either in North Carolina or maybe even nationally? What are the best doing that the kind of average construction firms aren't doing?
I would say it's an attitude towards safety. Do they see safety as a burden and just a bunch of regulations that they've got to adhere to, or do they actually see it as a positive value for their organization to keep their workers safe, to attract and retain talent? Do they understand the value? I mean, some folks are making just huge investments in safety. We have a program in North Carolina called the Carolina STAR program. It is a safety certification. Sometimes it's called an award, but it's really a certification. Very rigorous to achieve a STAR certification. There are only 144 STAR employers in the state of North Carolina out of 250,000 private sector employers.
And that's across all industries?
Across all industries. 144 out of 250,000 private sector employers. And these are folks who enter into this program voluntarily. They go above and beyond. They don't just meet OSHA standards, they exceed them. And they have made huge investments in safety because they see it as a core value of their organization. So that's what the best are doing. They are seeing what the minimum is and saying, we are going to be well above whatever the minimum is. And if we got to buy new equipment, if we have to make this investment or that investment, they're willing to do it. And they make safety a part of their culture. They celebrate it. The best employers, when we have one of these STAR certifications, host a big party for their employees. They really put safety front and center, and they put their money where their mouth is.
Yeah. You mentioned a couple times the benefits and the business case. Is that data available anywhere? I mean, as an employer, do I have access to the data so I can go to my team and say, hey, listen, and again, I don't know if it gets this granular, but for every point we drop our incident rate, our recruitment and retention, or again, recruitment and retention of all contractors goes up. Do we have access to that information?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of ways to measure it. Certainly, your workers' comp insurance rates are going to reflect the injuries that you have. The more injuries, the higher your insurance.
But there's no national, I don't think, I would never see where I could see one of my competitors' data, but is there an aggregated data source to say, hey, as a state, we've seen these kind of trends. If safety goes up, these other either indications go up or down depending on whichever direction is good?
Well, I think it's on an individual basis. So take, for example, these STAR employers. There are a lot of owners out there, especially large institutional owners, who will insist that not only that you have a clean safety record in order to bid the job or to win the job, some of them are even starting to demand that they be a Carolina STAR employer. And I know my Carolina STAR builders that I talk to say, we put that in every bid, that we are a Carolina STAR builder, and we put that in every bid. And so if they're asking for a clean safety record, we are miles above and beyond what's necessary. And so I think they're certainly seeing that it affects the bottom line positively. And we appreciate owners, especially public owners, who insist on safety as part of building these big projects.
Because that, again, I think incentivizes that culture of safety that we want to see.
Sure.
And again, makes it better for everybody. So let's talk, we mentioned earlier the partnership. So North Carolina Department of Labor has a couple partnerships with Barnhill, but for the folks who are watching or listening who aren't familiar with those programs, what do those partnerships look like? What should people know about those partnerships, and kind of maybe give us just kind of high level overview?
So partnership is a special program that we have at the Department of Labor. We reserve them for high impact, high visibility projects that employ a lot of people. And they are built, by the general contractor, but with a safety partnership with the North Carolina Department of Labor. And it is effectively voluntarily inviting the department to be a part of your project and make safety as great as it possibly can be. It involves cross-disciplinary and cross-bureau interaction with the department. So we have our compliance bureau, our consultation bureau, our education, training, and technical assistance bureau. These bureaus come together to partner with the contractor on these high-impact projects, and then we're out there 4 times a year evaluating the job site, helping you catch blind spots, helping you improve your safety program. And it's typically reserved for, like I said, large projects that employ a lot of people that are going to go on for a while because the benefits of the program really accrue over time as we're out there 4 times a year. So by the end, the department, we send out a whole team, like 10 people will come out and walk the job site with you, have a conference, talk about the job site, talk about where you want to improve, ways that we can improve. And you do that, if it's a 2-year job, you do that 8 times. And by the end, certainly the job has been safer because the department has been out there and actively involved in safety, but it's really about sharing best practices, not only with the contractor, because the contractors a lot of times are pretty well aware. Somebody like Barnhill is already bought into safety, but it's about your first-tier subs, your second-tier subs, your third-tier subs, and the other people participating in the project as well. And so it's got the effect of making that job safer, but everybody who has participated in that partnership, including the subs, gets to take that knowledge with them to the next job. Mm-hmm. And so we have 2 partnerships going right now with Barnhill.
Obviously, we were a good fit for partnerships. And so, like you said, we're doing 2, both Creamery and North Carolina Education Campus. I don't know if it's a formal criteria, but what makes somebody, again, if other builders are listening, what makes somebody a good potential fit for the partnership?
Well, first, they've got to be committed to it, right? And you have to be, for lack of a better way to put it, brave. You are inviting the Department of Labor to come to your high-impact job at least 4 times a year. And if we try to pick projects that last a while to get the full benefit, so 8 times, 12 times we'll be out there. So you got to be brave, and you got to have nothing to hide, which is why I admire Barnhill. You don't have to do a partnership.
No, it's
you
optional.
Choose to do these. These are voluntary, and of course that tells us you're very confident in your safety program if you're willing to have 10 Department of Labor people crawling around your job site once a quarter. And so the criteria for us, though, as an agency is this a big job? Are a lot of people working here?
Yeah.
Will a lot of people get the benefit? So are there a lot of, first, second, and third tier subs? Will they benefit from having had this experience with us? And what is sort of the total number of people who are going to be on site? We don't want to – partnerships take a lot of resources on our end. If we're out there quarterly with 10 people, that's other things they're not doing. So we want to be on a big, high-impact job. That's why we're on the Creamery, which will be the tallest residential building in Raleigh when it's built. And that's why we're on the education campus, which is going to have a huge impact on the state of North Carolina, and it's right in downtown Raleigh.
And I never really thought about it this way because obviously I think about it from the Barnhill perspective, but is part of that, again, with the large headcount on site, it's almost as if, this culture of safety that we're building, maybe contagious is the wrong word, but, it can spread, right? So if we have 1,000 people that come through that project and are exposed to the partnership, is that part of the idea is that then again, whether it's if it's a sub working on our project, they can bring that back to our project, but if they're working on a different project, they can carry those learnings and again, that culture kind of spreads that way. Is that part of the benefit?
Absolutely. We already know that Barnhill is working hard to be safe. We need to also get to your subs and get that culture down to them. And you help communicate that culture, right? The fact that you are voluntarily inviting us out to this job says something to them about how they should interact with the Department of Labor as well. And so we want big jobs. We want a lot of people to fall under this protective umbrella of the partnership. And so usually we're looking for jobs that are, hundreds of millions or if not $1 billion size, because we know a lot of people are going to be coming through that job site and falling under the protection of this program.
But again, the challenge there too is for the builder. You guys want the bigger project. The bigger project has the most impact. But again, for us, the bigger project has the most impact.
Right.
So that bravery piece also goes up the bigger. It's like, okay, well, if it's a small project, fine. But now you're talking, okay, well, it's a several $100 million or it's that $1 billion project. Again, it's there's a lot at stake. But I think also there's a lot at stake. And so I think that's also where you get the biggest impact. So
and we try to people who are doing it right, we want to give them recognition.
Yeah.
So for the partnerships that we just did at the Creamery, we had a whole partnership signing ceremony. The media was there. It's a very formal thing to give it the positive recognition that it deserves. And when it's done, we'll do a closing ceremony. And it's a way to draw attention to the people doing it the right way, because you deserve that attention for doing it the right way. Again, that's safety being part of the bottom line.
And we've talked about benefits to the builder, in this case Barnhill, benefits to the agency. If there are other benefits to the agency in these partnerships, would be interested in hearing. But also, how do you think about benefit towards our client at the end of the day? How do they see benefit from a partnership like this?
Well, they're going to get a safer job, and they're less likely to have bad news coming out of their job site. And it also means they're working with a contractor who's hopefully aligned with their values, right? I mean, a contractor, again, I'll use the word brave. It shouldn't be scary, but for some people it is. A contractor brave enough to engage in a partnership is a quality contractor who I think you can rely on to build the project the right way and to take care of the people on that project. Because again, totally voluntary. Nobody makes you do a partnership. And Barnhill signed up for 2. We can only have the capacity to do about 5 or 6 of these at a time because of the resources they take. So,
and again, that's statewide.
Statewide, yeah. I mean, we are very selective. They're high impact jobs, and we work with people who we think will help advance the mission of the agency.
Good. Okay. Well, we'll keep looking for high impact jobs, and we'll keep looking for next opportunities to partner. I think as we kind of come to a close, I'd be interested in your time, and again, this could be within the agency or prior in your experience in construction, but are there any, or do you have one kind of safety myth that you'd like to retire, or maybe myth about safety or myth about the agency that you would, if you could just put it to bed forever, what would it be?
So I'll answer that by a bit of a story. I was a construction lawyer. I have plenty of friends in the industry from my time working with contractors, and I have friends who do not answer my phone calls anymore because they don't know whether it's Luke, their friend, calling or Luke, the commissioner, calling, and they don't want to talk to Luke, the commissioner. And so there's a lot of fear from the Department of Labor. People just think if the Department of Labor shows up, it means something bad. And sometimes it does. Sometimes people haven't done the right thing, and they are going to be held account for that. But most of the time, we are there to collaborate and partner with people because we think that's the best way to achieve the best outcomes. And so I think it's a myth that we are here to do nothing but issue citations and penalties and get you in trouble. And I feel like every interview I do, every place I travel is part of bringing down those barriers.
Yeah, and I think, the challenge too about that, and I forget where I picked up this quote a bunch of years ago, but I think often about proximity builds empathy, right? So if I'm someone who does not trust the Department of Labor, and again, I'm not answering your calls when you call, that doesn't give me the opportunity to see it any other way, right?
Sure.
I'm kind of stuck in that mindset. But if I start to invite you in and start to invite you to the job site, it's like, okay, hey, well, they showed up and we didn't get a citation. Hey, they weren't just on the look, and unless you kind of let that collaboration in, I think it's going to be impossible to see it any differently. And so again, that's just a struggle. I wish I had a piece of advice of like, here's how you would change that. But that's just hard, right? If you don't allow that proximity, you're never going to get the benefit of understanding that, hey, it can be a different way.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be what you've heard.
I think my version of that has always been it's hard to hate up close.
Yeah, yeah.
Same kind of thing. And we spend countless days on the road. I do countless interviews, talks, award ceremonies, with one of the main goals being exactly what you said.
And I like that quote a lot because that's exactly right. This goes far outside of construction and safety, but right, it's hard to hate up close when you see someone face to face. When you're talking, it's hard to not see more similarities than differences. So, last question, and I don't know if this is going to land or not, and I can give an example if I need to, but as part of your new job, and you mentioned kids earlier, are there any habits or traits that have changed about you that you've picked up, any tics maybe that you've picked up as part of your culture of safety that, I don't know if the right word is frustrate or annoy your family? Anything that's changed about you that your family takes note of maybe?
That is an easy, very obvious answer. I am on my phone more than I have ever been. When you've got a state of 11 million people and all 11 million of them are your boss, all 11 million of them reach out and just email, social media, every social media, you're just always accessible and there's always somebody to respond to or get back to. And so I am on my phone a lot more than I used to be, and that does annoy my family.
That's 11 million bosses. That's a lot. So with that, is there anything, final thoughts you'd like to bring up? And again, the answer can be no. Are there any questions that you wish I'd asked that didn't? Anything you want to cover? Last final thoughts?
No, I just want to thank Barnhill for inviting me and for its commitment to safety. It's really remarkable that we have two partnerships going on at one time. I'm not aware of any time in the past that any contractor signed up to do two with us, because that's 8 visits a year from the Department of Labor.
That's a lot.
On your jobs. And I'm just really value that y'all have put that emphasis on safety, and I appreciate you having me today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for coming down and making the time. And again, from our perspective, and I don't know if this was the logic, but we have one in the public sector and we have one in the private sector. So we kind of cover all of our bases with that. So thank you again for your time. For everybody else that's listening or watching, thank you for taking the time to join us on the podcast today.